All right, so get this. AI generating radiology reports. Faster, more standardized, super efficient, right? But what if it starts making stuff up? Kind of scary thought. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, all thanks to some really interesting research you sent over.
Yeah, it's really wild. Almost like the AI has this super vivid imagination,
Oh, where?
like in a really dangerous way.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely not good. So, I mean, these aren't just small glitches, right? We're talking AI hallucinations, the kind that could lead to, misdiagnoses, unnecessary procedures, all that. So today, we're going to unpack this new system. It's called ReXTrust, and it's basically like a lie detector for these AI radiology reports.
That's a great way to put it. And what I think is really interesting is it's not just about catching the AI in a lie. It's about understanding how it's reaching its conclusions.
Okay, so it's less about, saying wrong answer and more about understanding how the AI thinks. I'm guessing that's where this whole white box approach comes in. I remember reading about that.
Exactly. Think of it like, imagine you're trying to understand how a student's doing on a test. If you only look at the final score,
Wow.
you're missing a lot of information, right? But if you can see their work, see their notes, how they thought through it, then you get a much deeper understanding of where they might have gone wrong. And that's basically what ReXTrust is doing, is looking at the AI's work as it generates the report.
Makes sense. In the paper, they also talk about, like, black box and gray box approaches. What's the difference there?
So black box is like just seeing that final test score, no insights to how the AI reached its conclusion. Then there's gray box, which gives you a little more information, maybe some hints about the AI's confidence levels, but you're still not seeing the full picture. With ReXTrust, though, it's like having access to the student's entire thought process, all the college scribbles and notes.
So ReXTrust is more like the teacher who's grading an essay, not just like checking for the right answer, but really looking at the reasoning behind each sentence. I can see how that would be way more effective at, catching those hallucinations.
Exactly. And that deeper understanding, it's not just about detecting errors, it's about potentially learning from those errors and improving the AI systems.
Okay, so walk me through this. How does ReXTrust actually, peek inside the AI's brain?
It all comes down to analyzing what are called hidden states. So as the AI is processing information, writing the report, it goes through a series of steps.
Yeah.
And at each step, there's this internal representation of what it's thinking. It's like a rough draft. And that's what ReXTrust analyzes.
So it's like analyzing someone's stream of consciousness as they're writing, catching those little moments where the logic might go off track.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, there's another layer called the self-attention mechanism.
Okay, what is that?
It's a bit technical, but basically, it helps ReXTrust connect the dots between different parts of the report.
Connect the dots.
So like an AI. Imagine the AI is writing about a patient's lungs, right? It might say things like clear lungs or no signs of pneumonia. But then later on, it throws in evidence of a collapsed lung and the self-attention. It helps ReXTrust spot those inconsistencies by understanding how all the words and phrases in the report relate to each other.
So it's looking for red flags, not just in the individual sentences, but in the overall logic of the report. It's almost like a fact checker for AI. This is super interesting. And we haven't even talked about how well it works.
Well, the results are really promising. They use something called AUROC to measure ReXTrust accuracy, which basically tells you how good a system is at telling the difference between the true findings and the AI-generated hallucinations. And ReXTrust scored really high, especially for those findings that are clinically significant, the ones that could actually impact patient care.
Give me the numbers. I want to hear the data.
All right, so across all findings, ReXTrust achieved an AUROC of 0.8751. Now, a perfect score would be 1, so 0.87 is pretty darn good.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah, and what's even better is that for clinically significant findings, it jumps up to 0.8963.
So it's not just catching errors, it's really good at finding the ones that matter most.
Exactly, and when you compare it to other methods out there, like RadFlag or UniHD, ReXTrust consistently beats them. It seems like that white box approach, combined with the self-attention, gives it a real advantage.
Okay. So we're talking potential game changer. This could actually make medical AI safer and more reliable.
I think it definitely has the potential, but it's important to remember it's not perfect. The research also highlights some areas where it struggled. For example, it had a harder time with hallucinations related to pneumothorax, which is basically a collapsed lung.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
It could be that the AI is having a tough time processing certain types of images, or maybe the way those findings are written about is more complex, making it harder for ReXTrust to spot the inconsistencies. It's definitely something researchers are looking into.
Yeah, it seems like even with something like ReXTrust, there's still a need for a human to be involved, especially in healthcare.
Oh, absolutely. Radiologists are still so important, especially for cases like pneumothorax.
Makes you wonder, how is the AI seeing these images so differently from a human? What is it about a collapsed lung that's throwing the AI off?
That's a great question. It could be that. Certain things are just harder for the AI to pick up on. Maybe they're more subtle visually. Or maybe it's the language used in the reports. It's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, like the AI is still in training, making those rookie mistakes.
Exactly. And that's why research like this is so important.
Right. We need to figure out why these hallucinations happen.
So we can make the systems better.
But even if we get to a point where these systems are super accurate, I don't know. I don't think I'd be comfortable just letting AI make all the decisions. You'd still want a human involved, right?
Oh, for sure. Especially in healthcare, where the
Yeah.
stakes are so high.
It's like, would you really want a diagnosis based only on what an AI wrote without a doctor explaining it, you know?
I think most people would say no.
Yeah. You don't want to feel like just a number in some algorithm.
Exactly.
You want that human connection, empathy. That's so important in healthcare.
It really is.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about ReXTrust and radiology, but I'm curious about the bigger picture here. Could these AI hallucinations be happening in other areas of medicine or even outside of healthcare altogether?
Absolutely. Anytime you have an AI
Yeah.
trying to make sense of complex data,
Right.
there's the potential for these errors.
So it's not just medical reports. It could be anything.
Finance, law enforcement, anywhere AI is making decisions.
And the impact could be huge. It's
Yeah.
like we're relying more and more on AI, but it's not perfect.
We're still figuring it all out.
And sometimes AI makes mistakes in ways we don't even understand.
That's exactly why research like this is so crucial. It's showing us the limitations.
So we can find ways to deal with them.
We need to be thinking about this carefully.
How to use AI responsibly.
Yeah.
It's almost like AI is showing us our own limitations as humans.
Ow.
Well, if these super smart machines can make these kinds of mistakes, doesn't that say something about how we think?
That's an interesting thought.
Do we have our own versions of hallucinations?
I think so.
Moments where we misinterpret things? Or see patterns that aren't there?
Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of things.
Right.
And sometimes they get it wrong.
It's like we all have these internal models of the world,
And sometimes those models are just wrong.
which can lead to bad decisions.
Think about all the times you jump to conclusions.
Or made a decision without all the information. Or this happens to me all the time. I think I see something and then realize it was just my eyes playing tricks.
Our perceptions can be so easily influenced.
By things we don't even realize.
Yeah.
Emotions, expectations.
Even how tired we are.
So this research on AI
It's showing us.
that we need to be aware of our own limitations too.
Definitely. It's a good reminder.
To be humble, question our assumptions.
And be open to other perspectives.
It's like AI is pushing us to become better thinkers.
And be more critical.
So it's not about humans versus AI. It's about
Finding the best way to use both
together.
to make better decisions.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about ReXTrust, AI hallucinations, human oversight. This has been really fascinating.
It really has.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with something to think about. We've been talking about, how AI can hallucinate, make things up in those medical reports. But it makes you wonder, if AI can do that, what does that say about us, about how we think? Do we have our own kind of hallucinations?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, think about it. Our brains, they're always trying to figure things out, make sense of the world.
Right.
Taking in all this information, filtering it.
Yeah.
Through our own experiences, biases, trying to create a story that makes sense.
Yeah, like we're all walking around
Well-
with these little models of reality in our heads.
And sometimes those models are just plain wrong, which can lead us to make bad decisions.
Well-
Think about all the times you've, I don't know, jumped to a conclusion too quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Or made a decision without having all the facts.
Happens all the time. Or
Right.
like when you're so sure you saw something,
Right.
and then you realize it was just your eyes playing tricks on you
Our perceptions can be so easily influenced.
by things we don't even realize are happening.
Exactly.
Like our emotions, expectations, even just being tired. It can all affect how we see things.
So yeah, in a way, this research on AI hallucinations, it's kind of a wake-up call for us too.
To be more aware of our own limitations.
Exactly.
To not take things for granted.
To be a little more humble.
To question what we think we know.
And be open to other viewpoints.
Yeah, it's like AI is making us better thinkers.
More critical.
More careful. So it's not about humans versus AI.
Right.
It's about figuring out how to use them both together.
To make the best decisions.
Exactly. Wow, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
I've really enjoyed it.
We've talked about ReXTrust, AI hallucinations, the importance of human oversight, and even how all this relates back to our own thinking. Lots to think about.
Absolutely.
So to our listener out there, as you're navigating this world where AI is becoming more and more prevalent, just remember, stay curious, keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
That's great advice.
And never forget your ability to think for yourself. It's more important now than ever.
It really is.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a really enlightening journey.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.